But I'll finish this up. This, like I said, it's just me quick. I'm going to talk about the other number one draft picks of my favorite team, the San Antonio Spurs. So Antoine Carr gave us a ride to the store, and he actually lived near Sean Elliott at 281, where that Albertsons was, Thousand Oaks and 281. I imagine they must have lived in Hollywood Park because Sean Elliott, the broadcaster, actually opened a pet store. I think he loves animals, and me and Michael, my twin brother, we would walk there to the pet store. We probably met Sean Elliott more than any other NBA basketball player, and Sean Elliott actually did make an All-Star team, his former All-Star. Well-known broadcaster, and he was one of the coolest dudes. I had like 20 Sean Elliott autographs, or more than that. I think we had more Sean Elliott autographs than any other person. But so during that time, their star players were David Robinson, Antoine Carr, and Sean Elliott. And the Spurs have been the most successful team in franchise sports, in all of major American sports, football, baseball, basketball, even better than the Yankees. They had the highest winning percentage over the last 30 years, probably since 1989. Because David Robinson stayed with the Spurs for almost 20 seasons. And I don't know off the top of my head, probably 18, 19 seasons. And they made the playoffs just about every year. One particular season, though, David Robinson was injured for the whole season. So they actually finished with the worst record. And like I said, the draft lottery, they'll sometimes have a star player. So some NBA draft lotteries are more important than others. The David Robinson draft lottery was a big one. You look at a player like Shaquille O'Neal, whoever won the number one pick on that would get Shaq. A lot of times who the best player is going to be. So this particular year, Tim Duncan, probably the best power forward ever to play in basketball, was going to be the top prospect. And the Spurs finished with one of the worst records in the league, but they still only had a small percent chance of winning the ball because the number one pick, because a lot of other players also finished with really bad records. A lot of other teams finished with bad records. So they finished off that year one of the worst teams. Dominique Wilkins, former Atlanta Hawk player, was in one of his last years, and for some reason he played with the Spurs for 1 year, that year that they were horrible. I got Dominique Wilkins' autograph too. But they ended up winning the draft lottery, and then they drafted Tim Duncan. So then they had David Robinson and Tim Duncan. And before Tim Duncan, the Spurs were one of the top teams, but they had never won a championship. And if you were to say, San Antonio Spurs winning a championship, no way. Because in basketball, the same teams win the championships. The Celtics, the Lakers, recently the Heat, the Spurs, the Pistons. It's always the same teams. You look at the 4 teams left this year, the Lakers, the Celtics, the Heat. The Denver Nuggets are the only team that has never won a championship out of the teams currently that are in the playoffs right now. So David Robinson, Tim Duncan put together, they were the Twin Towers. And within 2 years, in 1999, they drafted Tim Duncan in 1997. Within 2 years, in 1999, they won the NBA championship, the first ever NBA championship. And it was a great moment for a Spurs fan, having watched the Spurs for 10 years. And Duncan was just in his 4th season. So Duncan would go on to play another 20 years, and they would also be one of the top teams in the league. She sprang aerosol outside, that lady. That's what you guys are hearing. It was so quiet, and then she realized I was doing a podcast, that this psycho lady that sings in my doorway, and so now she's come outside. But let's just ignore talking about the Spurs. I'm winning. This is being broadcast. Like, you can hear that, so... I'm winning totally. They're not. All right. So they drafted Tim Duncan in 1997, and within 2 years, they won the championship in 1999. Tim Duncan, David Robinson played together for the next 15 years or the next 10 years at least. And they won the championship again 2 years later in 2001. Or no, they won it in 99, then they won it 4 years later in 2003. They won it in 99, then the Lakers had their three-peat in 2000, 2001, 2002. The Lakers and Kobe Bryant beat the Spurs every year. They had some great battles that I saw in person sometimes. I saw Kobe Bryant play one of the best games in the Alamo Dome. So the Lakers three-peat, but then in 2003, the Spurs win their second championship. Then 2 years later, in 2005, they get Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker. They win another championship. Then they don't win again until they don't go to the NBA Finals again until 2013, where they play LeBron James and the Heat. and Ray Allen hits an incredible shot, and the Heat end up winning the series. But then the Spurs come back in 2014 and have the most successful playoff run ever, and they don't even have a superstar. It's all teamwork because the Spurs organization, they're known as being a first-class organization in sports. They're the most successful franchise sports team in all of sports, the highest winning percentage of the last 25 years. But they're also known as a first-class organization where they don't have players that have problems with the law or domestic abuse or anything like that. And San Antonio is a really conservative community. So the San Antonio Spurs and the community of San Antonio fit together great. So like I said, the Spurs have had the largest winning percentage in sports. They drafted these two awesome number one picks that ended up to be NBA legends. First, David Robinson in '89, and then Tim Duncan in 1997. This year's draft lottery was one of the most hyped draft lotteries since LeBron James 20 years ago. So there hasn't been a player that's been this hyped as Victor Wembanyama for 20 years. I don't think I pronounced it correctly there. But Victor, we'll call him, is a 7'3" or 7'4" player, very skinny like a pole, but can hit fadeaway three-pointers, can drive, has great handles. Is probably some people can put his hands on top of the backboard. Very coordinated, very skillful, very agile. Like I said, ESPN said he was the most exciting prospect ever to come into pro sports, into team sports, is what they said. So the lottery was really hyped. You know, I haven't watched it or anything this year, but for years I haven't watched the lottery. But I've watched it every year that they draft, that there was a huge player and the San Antonio Spurs had a shot at getting it. And every year that I've watched, they got the number one pick. I remember when they got the number one pick in 1989 when I was just a little kid, little boy. And I remember in 1997 when I was a teenager selling newspaper subscriptions and the Spurs had their horrible season. I said, hey, it's okay. They'll suck this year. Dark cloud is a silver lining. That means next year they could get Tim Duncan out of Wake Forest. And everybody was like, yeah, right. They don't have a shot. There's a bunch of bad teams. They'll get them, And then I just I really believed it. And then yesterday when I'm watching the draft lottery, and I'm just thinking about it, and I really believe that even though the Spurs had a 14% chance of winning, I was 100% sure that they were going to win it, the draft lottery, and they did. And it was really incredible. I don't think I made it happen, but like I said, I wouldn't have watched the draft lottery if it was just a regular draft and they were just having some decent players. But this is a franchise changing players. So the San Antonio Spurs have the best winning percentage in all of sports for the last 25 years. And now they're drafting a 19-year-old that's supposed to be the best basketball player that's since LeBron James. So I would estimate the Spurs are also going to be one of the top teams in sports for the next 20 years. They always seem to pick the perfect season to tank. So they get they have one bad season, so they get a great player that gives them 20 good seasons. So I'm really happy about that. And I've been watching basketball again. I know a lot of my viewers are into cats or anything, but I'm doing this for me. And if you like basketball and you heard my unscripted spiel off the top of my head there, come back for more. And I'll be doing this every day. This is episode number 2. I hope you enjoyed this. And I'm happy that we didn't get so many distractions. Other days we will. But thank you very much. And everybody have a great day. From me and my kitties in Honolulu, Hawaii. Aloha. G out.